This is the video you've been waiting for. 5 months ago, I applied for my temporary residency visa at the Mexican consulate in Detroit. Today, I'm updating you on the process. Do I finally have my temporary residency permit card? Keep watching to find out. For the best advice about moving to Mexico, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I upload a new episode every Thursday. I've been taking a little break from my YouTube channel to rest and enjoy the holiday season with my family, but I am so excited to be filming today. If you are new to my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alex, and I'm an American expat who's called Queretaro, Mexico home since 2017. Now, I moved to Mexico in 2017, but for the first two and a half years that I lived in Mexico, I was doing so on the tourist visa. Now, that is a 180-day stay that is granted to passport holders from countries on Mexico's no visa list. But this past summer, July 2020, I decided to apply for Mexico's temporary residency visa. This is the third video in my temporary residency visa process, so if you haven't seen those first two yet, go ahead and hit pause now and go watch those. I will link them in the description below. If you're still with me, then you know that I submitted my paperwork to INM Immigration in Querétaro at the end of August. That same day, I received an email with a username and a password that I could use to check the status of my temporary residency permit. Based on what I'd heard from other foreigners who had gone through the process in Querétaro, I was expecting to wait back to hear back from INM in about 2 months. I told myself, Alex, don't even think about your temporary residency permit until the end of October. The end of October came and went, and I still hadn't heard anything. I was thinking, okay, maybe it's taking a little bit longer because of the pandemic, and decided to give things until the end of November. During this time, I was hearing from other foreigners who had applied for their temporary residency at other immigration offices, other INMs in other parts of Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, Tijuana, Mexico City, Huatulco, and there were some people that applied after I did, that submitted their paperwork after the end of August, and were already getting their temporary residency cards back before me. So I am not gonna lie, that was a little frustrating, but you know, patience, since it's a virtue and whatnot, I just told myself to sit tight. Granted, were we not in a global pandemic, I probably wouldn't have been so laid back. If it had been any other time, any other situation, I think I would have gone to INM to check in person, since you can't call or email, about the status of my temporary residency card. But since up until October, INM in Querétaro was only letting in 50 foreigners per day, going to check on the status of my card in person would have meant arriving at 6 a.m., waiting in line in the dark for 3 hours, and I just didn't want to do that during the pandemic. When I hadn't heard anything at the end of November, I started to freak out a little. You can't leave the country while your temporary residency application is being processed. And since I turned in my paperwork at the end of August, I thought I was giving myself plenty of time, a nice cushion to hear back before I was due back in the States to spend Christmas with my family. However, since that was not shaping up to be the case, I faced the fact that I was going to have to apply for a permiso de salida y regreso, permission to leave and return, which is necessary so that your temporary residency application will not be voided. On the recommendation of a friend of another foreigner who went through this whole process in Querétaro, I decided to hand over the permiso de salida y regreso to Host Relocation. So I called up Host Relocation, I talked to Yvonne and explained my situation. She said that it wouldn't be a problem to get me what I needed, but after hearing my specific situation, after hearing that I had applied in August. She said that she wanted to check on the status of my temporary residency permit before applying for anything. She said, in her opinion, 3 months that I had waited, the 3 months that I had waited was just way too long. Something was up, so she wanted to check on it. So here's what happened. On Friday, December 4th, Yvonne called me up to say that she had gone to INM to check on the status of my temporary residency application. Turns out I had been approved in September. The letter, my approval letter, had been sitting on someone's desk in a filing cabinet, I don't know, since just a few days after I turned in my application, but it had never been uploaded. Apparently, the system went digital around the time that I submitted my paperwork, which caused a huge backlog. The government dropped off a bunch of new machines to speed up the process and cut down the return time for people who'd applied for permits, but since they didn't provide any training, it had the opposite effect. Yvonne sent me a copy of the letter so I could look through it and see if there were any mistakes, and there were many. The approval letter said that I was renewing my visa, that I was on a student visa, so obviously all that was no good. But fortunately, since Yvonne was right there at INM, she was able to talk to the supervisor that same day and get everything fixed so my approval letter was correct. According to Yvonne, the mistakes, the delay, they weren't due to anything on my end. I had filled out everything correctly. I had done everything that I was supposed to do. There was kind of just this freak thing with the backlog and then also throwing in COVID. It just kind of caused a mess. So if you have been following my videos about the temporary residency process, if you follow those steps and do things that way, you should be fine. The following Wednesday, Yvonne picked me up and we went to INM together so I could do the final steps in my temporary residency process. Unlike the permiso de salida y regreso, I had to be at INM in person to complete these steps. We got there around 11 a.m. and the gates opened about 15 minutes later. During the pandemic, INM has only been opening the gates twice a day at 9 and 11 a.m. to limit the number of people in the building. I had to show my passport as well as the paper that I had gotten when I was there at the end of August with my NUT number on it. Yvonne didn't go in with me. She said that she would be waiting outside to take me home once I was finished, and naively, I thought that it would be a pretty quick visit. I mean, how long could getting fingerprinted take? I was there for 3 hours. December is a notoriously busy month for INM, but the officials there were doing their best to keep people socially distanced. There were 3 different waiting areas. When you get to INM, you will see that most people, upon passing through the gates, are receiving a number. But if you're there to get fingerprinted, you're waiting for your actual name to be called. You're not going to get a number. Not long after I arrived, an official came and collected that paper with my NUT number on it, and it also had my full name on it. Just a little side note here, you can't use your cell phone in that final waiting area upstairs where the windows are. So if you have an appointment at INM, if you're going to INM, make sure that you have a book to read. Once an official at one of the windows called my name and I went over, the appointment itself only took about 20 minutes. She gave me a piece of paper with all my information on it, information about my visa, information about where I lived, and I had to look it over and assert that it was correct. You actually have to sign "Los datos son correctos." And she also really made a point of making sure that I understood that the signature that I was using to sign everything needed to match the signature in my passport. They are very, very particular about signatures in Mexico, so if you kind of have a varying signature, make sure that you are trying really hard to make it uniform. Then the official used a digital scanner to take my fingerprints. Those were the machines that got dropped off back in September, October, and threw everyone at I&M for a loop and ultimately caused that backlog. After the fingerprints, the official took a few very unflattering photos of me, but honestly, I didn't care because a few minutes later, I had my temporary residency card in hand. And really, I practically skipped out of I&M. Yvonne looked over my card and explained that it expires in August 2021. So I will have to renew sometime in July of this new year. My year of temporary residency started when I submitted the paperwork back in August. According to Yvonne, when I renew my temporary residency later this year, I will have the option to renew it for up to 3 years. Then, once those 3 years are up, I can apply for permanent residency. Honestly, I need a little break from thinking about all of this temporary residency stuff, but when the time comes for me to renew, I will share that process with you here on my channel. In the end, I still paid Yvonne 2,000 pesos, and given the errors on the approval letter, I would say that she saved me at least a trip or two to I&M. If you are interested in having Host Relocation help you with the temporary residency process from start to finish, it will cost you 7,000 pesos, which is approximately 350 US dollars. I will leave the link to their website in the description below. Speaking of links in the description, if you found my temporary residency visa series helpful, please consider making a donation via PayPal. You can find the link for my PayPal in the description below. If you have any questions about applying for temporary residency in Mexico, feel free to leave those in the comments below, and I will do my best to get back to them. I'm Alex from backpackingbrunette.com. Thanks for watching.